equanimity. Equanimity, the concept of it, which the way I learned it in my Vipassana course in 2016 in Malaysia, is equanimity is not wanting painful experiences to end or wanting pleasurable experiences to continue. It's completely being present with what is and allowing the arising and flow of what is without desiring or in some ways like accentuating emotions or feelings to a present experience. I really took this to heart. I really took this concept of equanimity in 2016 when I first learned about it. I felt like it was a miraculous key to understanding how to be human. And I feel what I learned, like a subtle subconscious learning in that, is that I think I somehow told myself to not have emotions, like not be very emotional. The nature of equanimity is not to not have feelings, it's just not to desire any sort of relationship around your feelings. So if you're feeling pleasure, it's not like holding on to that pleasure. And if you're feeling pain, it's not aversion to that pain and like wanting it to end, just allowing what is to be what is. And I feel that's a really beautiful practice. And I think somewhere inside of me, I internalized or I thought that it meant that I wasn't supposed to have feelings, I think, in some ways. And this idea of being a witness or behind my emotional body actually in some ways stopped me from having like the full set of my emotional experiences in the process of witness. And so I don't feel that that's a bad thing or a wrong thing. I just actually feel it's an incomplete state of being. So I feel in some ways I was able to learn what it meant to be within a calm nervous system from the state of witness and from my concept of equanimity. It meant I didn't really allow myself to enter into the fire of emotional identity or triggers or ego sensations. I sort of was able to operate behind it and still see it, but not at all identify with it and kind of just be with it within a passing experience, which I guess in some ways is what many people aspire to, or it's seen as a really beautiful and like high in some ways way of being. But recently, I guess I've went through a few different emotional experiences, but I think I was with both in my emotions and like outside of them at the same time, which is a beautiful paradox. But I'm sharing this because I think I wasn't actually fully dropped into my emotional reality, and not being fully dropped into my emotional reality kept parts of myself unexpressed and unknown to me. So in the last few months, I would say even before, I think starting this year, like around February or so of 2020, even before we went into quarantine here and COVID became what it is, which happened half March, I started to realize that for me to fully show up, I had to also show up with the parts of me that I had somewhere along the way deemed as not good. Like the parts of me that were needy and insecure and wanting. These parts of me that when I felt them in high school and in college, I felt like it led to my not belonging. It kind of ostracized me. So I learned that certain aspects of myself will keep me, are not acceptable and will keep me out of belonging. And what I realize now that I'm doing all of these things, I'm doing YouTube and I'm sharing more and I'm taking more photos of myself. My friend said, every time I'm on Facebook, there's a beautiful selfie of you, which is like, these are all things that are not common to my experience of living, but I'm, trying out different ways of being as a way of sharing my work. And in that process, for me to show up fully, and it's a vibrational, I don't know if anyone else will see it as like, and that I'm showing up as, but it's a vibrational thing, because it's not like I don't, everyone who posts anything, they like post their best angle and they post with like a little bit of a filter and like all of this stuff. Like no one's actually expressing their ugly face that we all have. Like, I'm not wearing makeup, so it's like one way that I'm just like being a little more authentic, I guess. But like we're all editing, we're all editing our expression. But for me to even show up here in my as clear as I could possibly express myself, and nice lighting, decent angle, even if people are telling me I should put the camera higher up. There's so many things I'm not doing that I guess would be better for me, but I'm just like, at least I'm doing it. But for me to do this, what I'm trying to say is, for me to even do this, I have to really befriend the parts of me that I didn't want to see, and in some ways I didn't want others to see. Because for me personally, if I don't really befriend the things I had connotated as dark or shadow, which I actually feel those words are really misplaced, because it's actually just an expression of life that's outside of our moral or acceptable ways of categorizing things. It's hard for me to show up at all, because there's so many ways I feel like I am not worthy of being seen. And so I have to really be in my light and be in my shadow. And actually, the deeper I befriend my shadow, I feel like the brighter my light is shining in some ways. And so this was a really big teaching for me. And what I realized was that in some ways, my equanimity was keeping me outside of my embodiment. And I wasn't fully in my body. And I actually feel like this is an evolutionary process, and there's nothing wrong. I think when we learn something that kind of expands our perspective from where it was, we want to deem that as wrong, but actually it's a perfect medicine. And at any point, something in our experience can be either medicine or poison, depending on what the presence is calling us. So I actually feel it's an evolutionary movement to be in witness, to understand ourselves as our higher selves, and as that expanded state of consciousness, not as attached identity and ego. And so then when we meet those parts of ourselves that are super identified and super connotations of egoic, we have the wisdom and the awareness of those expanded states, and we can hopefully meet these states in more compassion. Doesn't mean it's not hard. I mean, it was super sad for me, painful. I just cried a lot. And I felt so many emotions, because I really was allowing all of these aspects of myself that I had connotated as bad. And I was being like, you're a part of me, and it's not for me to heal you or me to transmute you or me to release you into the ethers of love and light. So I actually realized you are a part of this contemporary context of love and light, and these parts of me fill me out. They're what make me who I am. And it's the whole thing I've been saying about letting go of letting go, and letting go, letting in, because the more it's like I am all of this, and also in the same moment, of course I am not any of it, but the more I can just really be in that full sense of embodiment is to include all these parts of myself that I had previously excluded, and in some ways I didn't even realize they were still present. I didn't realize they were still longing to come home to the sense of my own heart. So I feel what I've been experiencing recently is a deeper sense of embodied equanimity, meaning it's I'm very aware of, it's a frequency, it's a frequential thing. It's a vibrational thing, because the words are the same, but the feeling in the body is so different. In some ways I'm very empathic. It's a part of what I am. So I can really easily feel others, but I feel like I'm so much more able to hold my own vibrational autonomy and still feel everyone around me, which creates a stronger sense of presence and being and joy in myself, because I am with myself. And it doesn't mean being with myself I cut off anyone else, but it's actually I'm creating a boundary of love, and that allows me to actually be in more acceptance with all of me and all of that which is outside of me. And I just don't find I'm having as many issues or problems with people around me, and everything is just flowing much more easily than I have perceived it to be. And I really do believe that everything external to us is a reflection of what's internal to us. So if I'm flowing with all different aspects of being and people outside of me, it's because I'm much more in deeper acceptance with all the aspects of being that's inside of me. Perhaps there's more things in the shadow, but in my present contemporary awareness of this moment, I'm in love with my shadow, and I'm in love with the things I put in shadow, which actually is just things that the society, I had internalized society saying is bad, which isn't bad. It's just characteristics of existence, and that's completely normal. And the more I accept me, it's like I can accept everything, and I can be really joyful and happy. And it's really like, I don't know, it's really lovely. It's really lovely. And so, like I was saying, I feel like it's an evolutionary place. Like I really needed the wisdom and the capacity to non-identify, to in some ways identify, and identify from not a place of holding on to or definition, but from being, from a constant state of flow and existence and being. So yeah, I feel like perhaps I actually just am more understanding what equanimity is, and I just had, like, in some ways, I misinterpreted it as a way of how I needed to understand it for my own sense of safety in this, at times, very harsh world we live in. And the deeper I just like fall in love with myself, in some ways, it's like the less harsh this world seems, and the more I can derive the nectar and the joy and the love from it. See, so this is my understanding, my learning, in some ways my evolution of equanimity, and just my expression of what it means to be embodied equanimity, which is to really be within one's emotional state, like really be in one's body, and in some ways at once know that you are not this and completely be this. So it's as if the witness and being with, it's this really intimate relationship that they're constantly dancing, and it really is a cycle of flow, and there's no one state of being that is precedent or seen as better than the other. It's actually to be in the allowance of both. This is my sharing. Have a beautiful moment wherever this moment lands in you, and if you have any questions or comments, you can put that below. All the things we say at the end of each video are being said. Deep blessings, and have a beautiful moment, however this moment lands within your life.